Hello and welcome to this patch preview. My name is Ólafur Hrafn Steinarsson, and with me this time around is none other than the Open Tournament double champion, Darkness. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you very much, Ollie.
How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm pretty fine, and I'm very excited to see these new patch notes, these new changed cards, as probably the first one.
Yep, yep. This is 13 cards that we have changed in this coming patch. The patch is going to roll out on the 1st of October. And let's just get right to it with the first card that is being changed, and that is the Key 44 Toho. So now, on deployment, the enemy discards a random bomber from hand.
Hmm. I really like this change. Maybe this card is even getting a little bit weaker, but the previous effect, dealing 1 damage to all enemy airplanes, was not good at all because there are no airplanes with 1 HP
Hmm.
beside the Betty of Japan.
Yeah,
So this effect was pretty useless previously.
it's true.
But no, the enemy discards a random bomber from hand.
I mean,
I do like this effect because the best bombers in the game are US,
yeah,
and now this uh, Japanese fighter is targeting US playstyles like the Avenger, like B-17. I do like this.
yeah. I think that's interesting because we saw B-17s and Avengers in pretty much every deck, in the Open tournament, for instance. And now, I mean, I guess Japan has a kind of built-in response to some of that um, by running the Key 44 here.
Yeah, and that's amazing because in the World War II, a big battlefield where in the Pacific between US and Japan, I like the theme of Japan targeting US because the US was fighting against the local power of Japan.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great change just because of the history accuracy.
Yeah. All right, next one. It is another Japanese airplane. This time it's the Ki-27 Nate. Some big changes here. The stats are changing, the attack and defense. We now have another 1 HP plane, but it only
Hmm.
costs 2 credits now, and the destruction gives you a random Japanese unit that costs 1 or less to your hand. So a little bit more value. It went down from being a 3 cost.
It has 3 costs and I believe 2 K operation costs.
Yeah.
This Keynate looks actually good. Well, 2 credits and the destruction effect, getting another 1 K unit to your hand. This fighter will fit now in aggro decks. Well, it's good enough to be a special now.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It wasn't really doing its job before then. All right, let's jump on over to the only Italian card that is being changed in the coming patch, and that is Colonial Dreams. The player with the most units in hand draws 2 cards, and that is now being dropped down to a 1 credit.
Hmm. I don't know about that. uh, Colonial Dreams, I don't think if someone actually was playing that card. That's probably the reason you buffed this by
Yeah,
lowering the credit costs.
yeah. I mean, this has been a card that hasn't been seeing the use that we would want it to see. So we're definitely seeing if that changes with dropping the cost of it.
Yeah, that's maybe this is going to happen. But the problem with this card is the player with the most units in hand draws 2 cards. You see, if you need card draw of drawing units, you're playing an aggressive deck and you're throwing your units all out, and then this card is useless because the enemy probably has more units than you do. So maybe this card is able to getting played in some mid-range decks.
potentially. But Italy doesn't have a ton of mid-range decks,
Uh,
right?
Yeah, that's true. Alpine is maybe mid-range, but it's too aggressive.
I mean,
Um,
actually, I mean, in the context of Alpine here, if you are running a really heavy Alpine deck, very low on orders, and just focusing a lot on
yeah,
Alpine units, this might work well in that type of deck.
that might work well, but there are not enough Alpine units
Yet.
yet. we, we need more Alpine units with maybe 4 credits or 5 credits cost to make this card work.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's a good
maybe
point.
people will find some decks, some archetypes to make this card work. I don't know. Let's see.
All right, we'll see. Now we go over to the Soviets, and this one I think is a pretty interesting change. This card has been changed a couple of times in the past, and this is the SU-76M. So now on deployment, you only deal 2 damage to your HQ instead of 3 damage. So a little bit less that you're sacrificing for a 5/3 3-cost tank.
This card got changed so often. Um, maybe this is some fine balancing now because from 2 deployment damage, previously 3 deployment damage to your headquarter, that is not much. That's not a big difference. Sure, this tank is a little bit better now.
It adds up if you're running multiple units, right? So if you're running 4 of these, you're now only doing 8 damage to your headquarters if you deploy all 4 instead of 12. I think that's kind of the big difference.
Yeah, of course. Of course, that's a big difference. But the difference is still kind of small, you know. Nothing from the credit cost or operation cost changed, no stats changed. Mm,
I think the question is how many times have 4 of these been played within a single game? And the answer is probably never.
well, when this card was 5/5 from stats, it was played a lot,
Yeah, that's true.
definitely.
That's true. All right.
Um, but I think it's still a little bit better, and in some low rarity decks, this is maybe played more often in aggressive German Soviet decks.
Yeah, and I think that's also important. You know, one of the things that we're looking to do with some of the balancing now is also kind of hitting the middle of the pack, right? Not just the highest level of play at the top of the
Mm.
ladder, but also balancing some of these standard and limited cards to give them a little bit more flexibility and power, so that newer players can experience the strategic depth that we know cards has to offer a little bit earlier without having to have a ton of elites and
Mm.
specials.
I like the idea and nice try. I not ironic. Maybe this is maybe this is going to work that way.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see. So if you are a fairly new player and you like playing Soviets and you end up using the FCU-76M a whole bunch after this patch, please let us know that we're on the right track. But let's jump on to the next Soviet card. And this one is a little interesting to me because its change has kind of, more implications than just changing the credit cost, and that's tractor factories being dropped down to 8 credits, meaning that you're now able to play tractor factories, move your tank, and attack with it within the same turn for
Hmm.
12 credits instead of being 1 credit short.
I really like this change. I tried tractor factories in multiple times and some tournaments, but it's great value because you're getting 2 tanks from 1 card, like high altitude bombing, destroying 2 units with 1 card. But it felt very, very slow because Yeah, with 9 credits, you are only able to attack once and not even move one of your tanks.
Hmm.
This is a little bit better now because you can maybe wall both tanks to the front line or attack with both tanks if the front line is full of enemies. Mm, this is surely a buff and a welcome one.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how this one plays out. Like you say, I think there is a ton of value in being able to put, two 5.5 tanks on the board and put them both in the front line to body block, or potentially, reach across the battlefield and doing 5 damage in the back line within a single turn. So I think this is going to have a huge impact on the play that we see from this card. So are you ready to go on over to the US of A?
Yes.
All right, so the first one, it's a change to special delivery. So all of the threes have now become twos, pretty much. Two
Huh.
credits, discard all cards with cost two or less instead of three or less, and
Mm.
then draw two cards instead of three cards.
That's very interesting. Well, I do believe special delivery in the previous patch was very strong. Very, very strong. Um, it's like mobilization. If you're getting rid of all of your 3k or less cards, it's basically a mobilization for 2 credits left.
Yeah.
What gives you a lot of tempo, and that benefits a nation like US. But now,
I also think
I
one of the things it did really well was combo with things like the honey, right? Like the U.S. being the ally there, it
yeah.
made a lot of things possible. So I think this change is actually nerfing, so to speak, a lot of different decks.
Yeah, it's a little nerf because you're not drawing two. You're now drawing 2 cards and not 3 cards anymore. But it's 1 credit less, so you don't need 3 credits anymore, and you still discard cards, but not your all of your 3 credit cards.
Mhm.
And I think that's a buff. Supply chain, for example, is two
Two
credits, and
credits.
that's still a combo card with that.
You can still use it to get rid
Um,
of resistance.
yeah, not if resistance is hitted by Blackwatch,
No.
um, because yeah, resist buff, resist mechanic resistance cards are 3 credits. That's not possible anymore. That's a
Mhm.
little nerf, but if you're looking at a lot of decks or most of the decks, um, excluded the very, very aggressive and very, very heavy late game decks, uh, the curve of the credit curve is at 3 credits.
Mhm.
So discard all cards with cost 2 or less is actually a buff.
Yeah, it can probably work in a wider variety of decks.
Yes, because you're not discarding 3 of your own cards anymore.
Yeah.
You can play this actually more often, and for 2 credits, draw 2 cards and get rid of maybe resistance or combo with supply chain. This is good. I do like this change. It's a little nerf because you're drawing 1 card less,
Mhm.
but overall, it's maybe a little buff to this card.
The thing that isn't changing is you can still have the situation I had it where I mulliganed and ended up with 4 special deliveries in hand. It was the most painful turn 3 of my life, just getting rid of my entire card draw. That can still happen to you, so.
Yeah, it happened to me very early after this card was released. Maybe the 6th or 8th game, I draw all of my special deliveries within the first 8 turns.
All right, let's go on to the next one. This next one is, I think this is an interesting one as well. So, Counter-Strike, changing the credit cost, and now it's no longer
Ooh,
just an artillery or an air unit, but it's just when a unit attacks your HQ, destroy that unit.
you really want to see Counter-Strike in an Officer Club championship. Actually, this card is good now because the effect is just destroy unit. No compromises. Not only artillery or air units.
Mhm.
What makes this card previously completely useless against a lot of decks.
Yeah.
Because the enemy will not attack with artillery or fighter or bombers your headquarter if the enemy is able to trade.
Mhm.
You're not losing units if you can attack with bombers or artillery. So previously, if this card was triggered, it was already too late. And that's the reason why this card wasn't played at all.
Mhm.
But now it's just a destruction effect. Sure, it's 3 credits now. You'll probably be aware of the enemy missing 3 credits, but it's US. Maybe
With
you are
ramp,
at
yeah.
18 credits,
Yeah.
so
I think that's actually a really good point. This might seem like it's really strong in the early game, but it's actually in the late game where it truly shines, where you can kind of get away with leaving 3 credits a lot more easy. And
yes,
especially at the kind of like the highest levels of play, because I see you guys are regularly playing around, any type of countermeasure if there's any credits left on the opponent.
it's definitely shining in the late game because imagine facing an, I don't know, Alpine deck or Japan aggressive deck. If turn 3 there are 5 credits on the board, 5 units on the board, all of these 1 credit cheap stuff,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, you're able to kill one with these counter strikes. That's not gonna save you.
Yeah.
But in the late game, where these big Tiger IE or Leopold or B-17, all of this stuff, Lancaster, all of these
Mhm.
big units coming out, and the opponent is maybe not recognizing 3 credits left and Counter Strike.
Yeah.
This will shine in the late game.
All right, I'm looking forward to it appearing in the next Officer Club Championship. All right, next one. A very talked about card, an extremely strong one. We've seen it all over the place. It is the Avenger. It is being touched this patch. The change is simple. It's no longer 7 credits, it's 8 credits.
I see. I don't like this because um, I really enjoy playing US or with US ally because I like playing control decks. That's just a little nerf to the Avenger. Uh, but this really hurts the
I mean,
tempo.
yeah, I do, however, think it was kind of necessary that Avenger
Yeah.
B17 4 card combo was being so oppressive and being brought with so many different decks that if you think about it, being a player earlier on in their journey that doesn't have all 4 of these cards, that just
Mm.
it just feels really bad. So I think this makes sense to bring the Avenger, in terms of value for credits just a little bit closer to the other bombers and cards that you might accumulate earlier on in the journey.
Yeah, of course, it makes sense. And B17 Avenger where auto includes cards.
Yeah.
Uh, if you're going for ramp or late game decks, sure, maybe this nerf was necessary. I still don't like it.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, we'll head over to Britain now. And this change, like, I'm a little bit nervous about it personally, because I immediately just started thinking about some decks, but Raid is now only 1 credit.
Hmm. Maybe we are going to see some raids now. I know what uh, what your feeling is, getting a little bit nervous.
Gears are turning. I just
Because previously you didn't saw raid at all.
Mhm,
I don't know really why, because I think it has some great tempo delay potential,
mhm.
but now only 1 credit and card in enemy hand costs 2 more next turn. I'm afraid to say this is a buff to resistance, because you
Mm,
can delay your opponent now to play cards and spam all of your resistance cards.
interesting. Yeah.
And maybe we are able to use raid against aggressive decks. It's
Yeah.
only 1 credit now, and it will hurt an ultra aggressive deck if you're playing this in turn 1, turn 2, turn 3.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I guess I'm most excited about. I mean, what I like about this card is that it's a temporary effect, right? It's like I'm temporarily blocking you by having your cards cost more. So you need to be less efficient next turn, but after that you can be as efficient as you want again. So I think that keeps it a little bit in check, but as you say, once you start compounding it with other cards and other combos, uh, because this is a special card as well, and you can bring it into the ally package, I'm thinking about things like, you have Scorched Earth, you have Grounded, you have so many different ways to kind of combine this into a control-heavy deck that can really shut down the opponent.
Yes, shut down the aggressive or mid-range opponent. US still don't care.
Yeah, the US just ramp. I mean, you might be able to delay the ramp strategically, for instance, playing this before turn 5, so you can't
Yeah,
get the war bonds off. But
that's true. But if you're going to play raid, you're playing a control deck and you're not able to win pretty fast
that's true.
against US.
That's true.
So I think you will see this deck maybe in resistance, maybe in control and anti-aggro, and in order decks, because it's still a temporary effect. It's 1 card, and if the opponent waits 1 turn, it's useless and 1 lost card. You need something like the Crusader to gain another card out of this to make this most
Yeah,
efficient.
this is growing. I'm gonna try this in my commando deck. Low cost order, tempo. I like it. All right, another thing that is a staple in the commando deck, legendary general Monty is facing some changes. Instead of pin all enemy units and draw a card, there's now a requirement to draw the card. You have to pin 3 or more enemy units in order to get the card draw.
You finally touched Monty. I saw a lot of people of beginner complaining about Monty, how broken and how strong this card is. Yeah, it is strong, but I'm British main player, and I don't know if I need to take this personal. Well, yeah, I don't like this change, but maybe it was necessary because Monty was incredibly strong.
Yeah,
And the potential is still there. If there are 3 or more units, you still draw a card. You can have this great, great value out of this, but you're not able. If this may be a late game matchup and you're having 1 unit, enemy having 1 unit, you're drawing this card, you're not able to just play it and draw another card. This
yeah.
is a little problematic now.
Yeah, I definitely kind of see what you're getting at. I mean, I personally love Monty as well, but I did think it was a little bit too strong, especially, because people were starting to just use the card so readily, more about the draw, and the fact that it just pinned everything was a good additional thing. It was like having a supply shipment in hand at 1 credit that also pinned everything, right? It was just a little bit too much. So I quite like this change, and I'm interested to see how it's going to change the way this card is played and played around it in certain matchups. I mean, now you're able to, for
Now
instance,
you're able to play around.
yeah,
That Yeah, that's true. It's a little more strategic and a little bit more tactical now. I like this fact. I'm still a little
you're still
uh,
sad.
I'm still a little sad. Yes.
I get it. I get it. But there's a buff coming, and I don't know if this buff is going to do anything for you, but the Valentine Mark III is getting a drop in operation cost. So no longer does it cost 4 credits to hit twice with it. And at 4 health and 4 copies of it, with all the naval support, health buff, attack buff
Yeah.
shenanigans you can
Yeah.
do with Britain, I'm pretty excited about this card.
I see what you did there. Yeah, the previous Valentine MK3 was pretty bad because of the 2 operation costs. Now you can make this actually work with Fury to buff this unit and to attack, not with a decent loss of any tempo. But this will probably benefit the middle of the player base.
Yeah.
I do expect, yeah, there this card being played more often in buff decks.
Yeah, I think this opens up. I think this opens up a little bit of a kind of Fury buff deck for players with a fairly limited collection, because you now have mostly standard and limited cards that you need to make that run. You know, the Humber, you have the Valentine, then maybe you have a Black Watch or two to throw in there as well, and then you're able to kind of pad that out with a lot of the kind of cheap and standard limited orders from Britain as well, to really kind of early
Mm,
on get a pretty effective deck that has a clear identity and purpose.
yeah,
All right, are you ready for your the German nation and what comes there?
of course. Let's go German.
Okay, I'm going to start with the 33rd Panzer Grenadiers. So now, on deployment, give friendly tanks +2 attack this turn instead of
Hmm.
+1 attack.
I do like this change to 33. Panzer Grenadier, because previously this card wasn't played at all, I think. And now +2 damage to friendly tanks is actually good. Not as good as Blitzkrieg, but this is still a decent buff to maybe the Panzer 2A or the this little flag thing. I don't know, 2 credits
Yeah, yeah,
and 1/2 stats. 3.7 millimeter flag, something.
yeah. I know which one you're
Um,
talking about.
this buff benefits German aggression decks with a lot of tanks, but it's still a standard card and will probably buff decks with lower rarity.
Mhm.
But maybe you are going to see this in the high level play too. I don't know. There's a small chance.
What excites me about this change is I feel like it gives you a little bit more, again, strategic flexibility when it comes to Germany, right? I mean, I think there's quite a few occasions where you can benefit from having +2 attack on maybe two of your tanks, but you wouldn't want to, let's say, spend 3 credits on a Blitzkrieg in the front line because you could see
Yeah.
more value on that later. And at least this time around, yes, you get that plus damage on your tanks, but you also end up with a 4/3 power unit on the board. So
Mm.
I feel like this kind of gives you a little bit more options maybe to deal with some of those early British Guard units, pushing the attack on the tank just high enough to deal with maybe some of those East Surreys or Fifth Brigades. So I'm pretty excited to see how this becomes used, especially at standard rarity.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So are you ready for the final card that's going to be changed in this upcoming patch?
Yeah, I am.
All right. It is the Reichsbank. It now
Right.
costs 3 credits and gives you 5 additional credits next turn, meaning that if you play this turn 3, on turn 4 you'll have 9 credits. You can play a Panzer, i.e., right? Yeah, the Tiger
That's
H. A Tiger H turn 4.
this is weird. I do see the potential. Imagine playing this at turn 4 and dropping turn 5 Leopold.
Yep.
There, there are some. There's great potential with this. But you're still only getting 2 credits out of this because you're spending 3 credits, getting 5 credits. It's the same amount of credits you're getting as Iron from the North, and this card is still bad.
This was
But
actually this was one of the most debated changes coming into this patch. So I'm really curious how this plays out. I'm not going to say that I have any clue because I mean we still have to know, is it good to play a turn 5 Leopold, or are you just going to get countered and now you don't have a Leopold to deal with the late game board, right?
yeah, there are things like Tactical Strike against this, or Rough Lightning to sandbags, Tiger IE or IH. But is there something you can really benefit from? Oh my god, you can play Panzerzug turn 5 with that,
You can.
or even turn 4.
You can.
If you're able to play Panzerzug turn 4 and having a aggressive or mid-range deck, you're drawing cards over and over again, and it's pretty hard to deal with that.
Get a Panzer in the front line turn 5. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
That would actually be pretty crazy.
but it's
Maybe the
still
Panzer is finally viable. Yes.
it's that's a crazy idea, but it's still a huge tempo loss because you need three turns to make that work. Like
Yeah.
turn 3 Reichsbank, turn 4 playing Panzerzug, turn 5 moving Panzerzug to the front line, and the front line needs to be free.
Yeah.
If there's any unit blocking it, it's not going to work.
Maybe it's like
Hmm.
maybe this can work in some mind the gap combos, right? Because you could
Maybe
effectively you could play this turn 3 and then play mind the gap and grab a unit that then has blitz and you play it and attack with it on turn 4.
I see. But the problem with this is you need some low-cost units to get the front line,
Yeah.
but you don't want low-cost units with Mind the Gap or Close the Gap.
Yeah.
Um,
Close the gap. I don't remember what it's
yes,
called.
Close the Gap.
Close the gap. Yeah.
M- Maybe this card can work better as ally nation
Yeah.
to maybe a Soviet playing this turn 3 and throwing KV1 or some other crazy tanks or units in the battlefield, or allowing the British to play a huge combo of orders.
Turn 4 B17.
Turns 4 B17 with this is some ultra ramp. Gaining tempo with Reichsbank to play even more ramp or big units in the early game.
Wow, that's actually crazy. I hadn't thought about that. It's like Huh. Now I'm excited to go do some testing with this one. Well,
Yeah, definitely. This
s-
is, but I'm expecting a lot of people testing this card with a lot of ally nations. Maybe this is going to work, but probably um, the popularity of this card is very low
yeah,
after this again, because I don't see great value. Well, some decent combo potential, and maybe if you're having the right card to play incredible units early on, this can work. But there are not a lot of units who are expensive and game winning turn 5.
it's true. That's true. But that was it. Those were all the cards that are going to be changed. Overall, how do you feel about this upcoming patch? Do you think it's going to shake up the meta a little bit, give us a little bit of an extension of this new feeling out period following the last patch?
Mm, well, this were a lot of cards, 13,
Yeah.
but half of them won't affect the high level play. And the other half maybe won't affect the mid level or low level play. So I don't think this patch is having a huge impact, but maybe I'm wrong and we are going some Colonial Dream decks coming, Reichsbank decks coming.
What I like the most about making sure that we are regularly doing these balance updates and kind of touching up on some of these cards is that even though this might not be an absolute game changer, you're going to see much more variation in the decks that you face. And it's going to be more challenging in some aspects to have to play around potential cards from your opponent because they might be running something that you don't know about. Maybe somebody finds, like you say, a Colonial Dreams combo that is just crazy, and you run into it for the first time, and you get absolutely stomped by it. But at that point, that's kind of a fun experience because normally for the past 10 games before you landed against Italy, they played the exact same deck and you know exactly how to beat it and you know at which point you're beat. So I'm really looking forward to getting on the ladder and seeing how these changes impact my experience of cards.
Yeah, I do like these small variation of balancing updates too, especially with these cards you are not going to play anyway, like the Keynate or the Tojo, to maybe add something to them so they are played sometimes, or maybe actually are being good, and even touching the most played cards and the most popular cards like Monty, like Avenger, a little bit, enough to make me a little bit sad, but not too sad to stop playing cards,
a,
but
sa- a sad
seeing
a sad darkness just theory crafts more. A sad darkness is a dangerous darkness.
but it's a little change uh, to make change. So it's not good for a card game to be very static.
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see how this continues to evolve as well. And what I really like about this is by changing these cards up as well, you have the possibility of finding hidden treasures in your collection. Now, almost regardless of how much of your collection you have, you might see a card has been touched that when you got it in the pack, you were like, oh, not that card. Oh my God, that card sucks. And maybe you got four of them and it felt really crappy at the time. Sometimes that happens, but now it just got buffed and it got good. And because we're not, a physical card game where you have to print out a bunch of cards and mail them all over the world, we can do this. We can make these changes and change these stats retroactively, meaning that doesn't matter what resides in your collection. At some point, all of it will be relevant, and you'll get a chance to play all these different units, whether you were the happiest in the world when you got them the first time around or not. But that's going to be it for us. Thank you so much, Darkness, for joining me here and giving us your time and insights onto the upcoming patch changes. This upcoming patch is going to be hitting on the 1st of October, so I'll see you all in game.